Welcome to this explainer. What if I told you that a lot of those massive cloud migrations we always hear about have way less to do with technology and a whole lot more to do with human psychology? We naturally assume that moving to the cloud is this purely rational, numbers-driven business decision, faster innovation, infinite scalability, and lower costs. But is it always? If cloud adoption is just a rational, mathematical equation, then why are some companies actually moving workloads back out of the cloud? And why do organizations with literally the exact same types of applications end up making completely different infrastructure choices? Why do executives sometimes greenlight projects that their own engineers privately question? The answer is simple, but honestly, it's pretty surprising. Cloud adoption isn't just a technology decision, it's a profoundly human decision. Okay, let's dive into this. We naturally expect executives to use rational business logic. That's the baseline assumption, right? But the reality on the ground is often heavily driven by human psychology. And once you really start to understand the behavioral drivers behind these massive shifts, well, industry trends suddenly start to make a whole lot more sense. To truly get this, we kind of have to transport ourselves back to the early days, what I like to call the cloud dream. For decades, organizations had to build these massive physical data centers, buy servers, forecast capacity years in advance. It was incredibly slow. Then, public cloud platforms burst onto the scene with this radically new promise. No hardware, infinite scalability, pay only for exactly what you use. For startups especially, this changed the entire game overnight. Small teams suddenly had access to world-class infrastructure with just the click of a button. But over time, something really fascinating happened. The cloud stopped being just a piece of infrastructure. It stopped being a basic utility. It morphed into an industry-wide symbol, a symbol of modernization, of rapid innovation, and of competitive advantage. And the exact moment a technology elevates from a tool to a symbol, that is where human psychology absolutely takes the wheel. Think about it. When boards of directors sit around and watch massive success stories emerge from industry heavyweights like Netflix, Amazon, and Spotify, a very powerful psychological force takes over: FOMO, fear of missing out. Executives start looking around the room asking, wait, are we falling behind? And they start to assume that adopting the exact same cloud strategy will automatically guarantee their own company the same incredible success. Which brings us to the formal scientific definition for what's actually happening here: social proof. It's this psychological phenomenon where people look to others when making decisions under uncertainty. Cloud adoption literally became one of the largest examples of social proof in the history of modern enterprise tech. Organizations blindly assumed that copying their competitors would automatically work for them. They completely ignored the fact that they had totally different workloads, different regulatory requirements, and completely different economics. They were, essentially, just following the crowd. Let's put you directly in the hot seat for a second. Imagine you're a CTO, and you're navigating the, let's face it, dangerous waters of corporate career risk and self-preservation. Is it safer to follow industry trends or go against them? Moving everything to the cloud feels like the significantly safer choice, doesn't it? If a migration struggles, you can just point to the rest of the industry and say, hey, everyone else is doing it. But if you reject the cloud, hide out in your own data center, and then competitors gain an edge, that becomes a very lonely, nearly impossible to defend position. So the crucial point here is understanding what companies are actually buying. They aren't just purchasing compute power and storage space. No. First, they're buying the confidence to scale. Second, they're buying alignment with the rest of the industry. And third, protection against uncertainty. The hidden truth is that executives are really purchasing reassurance against an uncertain future, which just happens to be one of the absolute most powerful drivers of decision-making in any business. But eventually, every single technology decision faces a simple, unavoidable test. It's that moment when reality meets economics. This is the ultimate turning point, right? Where all of that psychological hype and FOMO inevitably collides head-on with hard financial reality. Now, what's super interesting to look at here is how certain types of workloads completely change the math. When companies enthusiastically push things like large-scale storage, high-performance computing, or heavy network traffic up into the cloud, the financial reality hit them, and it hit them hard. These specific data-intensive applications became significantly more expensive than anyone ever forecasted. Suddenly, cost forcefully entered the chat. And this massive financial shock led to a completely new trend that we called cloud repatriation. Organizations actually began moving selected workloads back out of the cloud and into private infrastructure or their own data centers. And it's absolutely vital to understand here, this wasn't because the cloud failed, not at all.
It was simply because the economics demanded it. Certain workloads just performed much better financially somewhere else. Companies weren't becoming anti-cloud, they were finally becoming objective.
Surviving that harsh collision with financial reality actually forced a major maturation in how companies think about infrastructure. They had to abandon the hype. The old question used to be a simple, trend-based yes or no. Should we move to the cloud? Now the question is much more mature and analytical. Where should this specific workload run?
And this brilliantly illustrates how history is repeating itself right now. The cloud boom of the 2010s strongly mirrors the artificial intelligence boom of today. Every single week there's a new model, a new breakthrough, a new hot startup. And once again, organizations are experiencing that intense fear of missing out. Nobody, and I mean nobody, wants to be the company that ignored the AI revolution.
But enterprise leaders are approaching AI a little bit differently this time around. Despite the immense FOMO, smart enterprises are actually applying the hard lessons they learned during the cloud era. Before deploying, they're demanding strict governance, comprehensive security reviews, rigid compliance, and rigorous cost analysis. They aren't just chasing trends and throwing every new model into production. They are methodically managing their risk to create measurable business value.
Which brings us to our core takeaway for this explainer. Technology decisions are rarely based on technology alone. They're heavily influenced by fear, by incentives, by career considerations, by industry narratives, and ultimately by human behavior. The smartest organizations understand that grasping these hidden psychological drivers is the absolute only way to separate hype from reality. And separating hype from reality? Well, that's exactly where better architectural decisions happen. Look, the cloud remains one of the most important innovations in modern technology. There is absolutely no question about that. But the real lesson here isn't just about platforms, it's about decision-making itself. Next time you hear about a major cloud migration, ask yourself, was it driven by technology or was it driven by psychology? The answer is usually a combination of both. I'd really love to hear your experiences with this. What do you think is the biggest psychological factor influencing cloud adoption today? Share your thoughts in the comments section of this explainer. Make sure to subscribe for more deep dives, and I'll catch you in the next one.